based on my experience, people who have not academically, and just by that I mean sit down, do an actual study of it, who have not academically studied their religious text, approach things differently than those who have. And those who have academically studied it tend to be more reasonable, for lack of a better word, because they can kind of refer to things a lot more concisely and portray ideas versus people who just go listen to what their pastor says. It's kind of like, I kind of blindly believe what that pastor is telling me in their interpretation.
I think that can be the case. I think there are a lot of people who don't do an academic study of these books, and they not, even so, they're also acknowledge their ignorance and like, I don't know, I believe in God. I'm
Okay.
I have 10 commandments, but I don't know.
Yeah, you don't necessarily have to take notes on it per chapter to derive meaning from it.
So if I can then continue this comparison, how is this any different than the scientist who does great science, believes in it, does the scientific method, and then goes ahead and then says that global warming is real? Because 99%, or like the last stat that was on 2015, is that 85 or 94% of scientists believe that global warming is real. Yet I can almost guarantee you that 90% of those 95% have not actually ever themselves went ahead and looked at the data that drew to that conclusion. They just hear that other people who are also scientists believe in it, so they kind of echo chamber it. How is that any different from religion? Or is it different?
I think it's different in the way that we talked about before. That, like if it was their field, then they would have looked at the data, and or if they had the time, then they'd look into it. I think it gets back to that.
But even
begrudgingly having faith. It's not like these people are
okay.
Like, oh yes, I have faith in this climate scientist. Yay! I don't need to look into it.
So
it's a begrudging thing.
The only difference is, I don't have time, and I guess I have to believe it. That. Whereas the other one, just like, I believe it. It's not kind of there's no like negativity or whatever associated with it, because that's a very like almost meaningless detail to me in that context. Like I can't see how the begrudging in that context. I don't like what I'm trying to say is, if you're a scientist who begrudgingly believes it because you don't have time, it is almost that in and of itself is not like a exemption for you to blindly believe it. If I apply that same logic to religion,
I think it's based on the consensus. It's like, okay, well, of all the people in this field, the vast majority, have this view.
But
so
I don't.
Reasonable.
But I don't.
It'd be like appealing to the theoretical physicists. Like say if 95% of theoretical physicists didn't buy string theory, and but 5% did, I think it would be reasonable for a microbiologist to be like, okay, yeah, string theory is probably not true. It's betting.
That was a weird cutout. So, sir, you're saying theoretical physicists?
Oh yeah. Okay. I'll just repeat myself. It's like for theoretical physicists, for instance, it might be the case that 95% of theoretical physicists don't believe in string theory. They don't buy it, but 5% do. I don't know what the proportion is, but suppose it's those numbers. And then I think it would be reasonable for a microbiologist to, knows nothing about theoretical physicists to buy that string theory is probably not true. Like they're betting on it. And I think that's a safe bet. It could be wrong, yeah, but
like in a weird way, if I apply like general logic, that same general logic to me, like if I'm taking away my bias of science, that almost sounds like the equivalent of, hey, the bishops in the Catholic Church believe this teaching, and because they are the scholarly believers of Catholicism, then I'm going to blindly follow it because the experts in that field say that this is true.
But the difference is those bishops were ordained by God to be bishops. And so if you were taking those bishops on faith, you would also believe, well, I am chosen to just be a priest or something. I don't have the capability to understand God as they do, right? So like the microbiologist theoretically could change their career, study physics, become particle physics physicist or whatever, and figure it out themselves, or spend a year to read up on the subject.
But couldn't
I think I just want to say I think the big thing is that the goal for science is to one day be digestible to the average person.
Amazing.
The way that it is now is that it's not, and so typically you have to look at experts in a field and then take their word for it, whereas the Bible was specifically translated to be digestible for the everyman, and so
At least in Protestant.
yeah.
Although no.
It
Sorry,
should be like everyone should be able to read the Bible so long as you are literate. If not, you can get an audiobook and listen to it. Like there's ways that everyone should be able to digest biblical things and derive meaning from it. That's not true with scientific fact. Scientific fact is more nuanced than that. It requires people to actually on the cutting edge to interpret these things because they aren't ordained from God, and they haven't been around for thousands of years, and they haven't been kind of put into a way that people should be able to digest it, right? So I think on one hand, it's shitty of science that we don't allow it, or we don't have it so that it's more easily accessible to everybody. But it's kind of just a product of what we're doing. It's complexity, I guess.
Yeah,
but
orders of magnitude way more complex.
yeah, I and so I think that's where the difference is that you legitimately need to get a PhD to be able to authoritatively speak on climate change. All you have to do to authoritatively speak in the Bible is to open a goddamn Bible and read it. And you should be able to have a conversation, a difference in opinion, a difference in interpretation, and so on and so forth. So I think that it's for those reasons that they kind of are so different to me.
I love that. I'm just imagining a scientific reformation, where what used to be the case that the Bible is only in Latin, so the average person couldn't read it, and so the Reformation allowed everyone to read it. It'd be amazing if we had that with science.
Because my initial thing on the same line as Teo is like, to me that just kind of sounded like in just from a processing standpoint, that religion is better because it's more accessible. It takes less time to get in, but also there is a hint of, possibly anyway, that this because this text has been stood so much time, in theory it is the best version it can be right now, in theory, whereas science, when you're on the cutting edge, because the cutting edge ideas haven't been around for hundreds or thousands or however many years, they aren't refined as well. So it's like almost like their logic points may not exist in 100 years because their logic points might not work.
But they aren't comparable. I just want to flag that it's not like religion or like the Bible and modern science are comparable physically or morally.
Yeah, and also like if you want to, if if the metric of better and best is digestibility and accessibility, then yeah,
Right.
maybe religion has, or Christianity specifically, has gone through such a selection process that it is as good as it will get. But by no means would I call that best or better. But yeah, I think that religion, yeah, it's very accessible and it should be digestible to everybody so that you can get some beneficial spiritual or like societal, being able to interact with people, some form of benefit. You'll be able to get that. Yeah, I think that's fair. But in no ways do I think that religion is better than science.
You just had to throw
We
it
just
in,
need a
didn't you?
reformation.
If we get a reformation, then science is the penultimate. If we get science to one day being digestible to the everyman, if we get that English translation so that that someone with a grade 10 education can essentially understand the flow of thought, it would be very transformative, and I think it would bust open the whole transformative ability of science. So I think it's really important.
Just raise everyone's IQ by 1,000 and get some sort of AI brain that processes information
You
1,000 times faster.
you pretty much need an AI brain, period, because the amount of lateral thinking you need to be able to actually understand every field at the same time and how they kind of interconnect is like